What are the top 5 biggest graduate school mistakes? Stick around and let's talk about it today on this episode of Navigating Academia. What's up, everybody? My name is Dr. Phoenix Singh. I want to warmly welcome you to this episode of Navigating Academia, your leading source for guidance on how to advance your career in academia. Now, before we get started, you guys know that I appreciate the love, so please do take a quick second here to like this video, subscribe to our channel, share it with all of your friends, colleagues, and students. Hit that bell so you get notifications every time that we post new original content, and also subscribe to our social media accounts that you can find below. So let's jump right in. As you all know, or will know soon, doing a graduate school interview can be one of the most stressful parts of your academic career to date. This is something where finally you've gotten over that initial hurdle where, your grades and your test scores, etc., your letters of recommendation, all of these other things that you, in many cases, have spent years getting in line have gotten you to this point. You are over the hump. And now what you need to do is essentially have a direct interaction, most likely with individuals who are going to be your future supervisor or supervisors, or if nothing else, individuals that you're going to have a lot of close contact with if you do end up getting accepted to this targeted program. And so because of that, it's very important that you ace the interview. So what I want to do today is to be able to share with you what I perceive to be the 5 biggest mistakes that you can make when doing a graduate school interview. So let's get it going. Mistake number 1 is providing unnecessarily long answers. Now, what I mean by this is there's nothing worse, and trust me, I've done, enough grad school interviews, conducted them as well as actually, done the interview myself. And what I have found is that one of the worst things that you can experience as somebody who is sitting down and interviewing a potential graduate student is if they essentially just drone on and on and on when you ask a question, right? Some of these questions are open-ended in nature. For example, in 5 years, what do you want your career to look like? Or, what are your long-term goals in academia or in clinical practice? Whatever it happens to be, those are open-ended questions, and you as the person responding could arguably take, multiple minutes to get things done. My recommendation is try to answer in 3 sentences or less and take less at maximum 45 seconds. 45 seconds is actually a pretty long answer. So don't worry if it's something where you can't properly time it out or predict what the questions are going to be. We do have another episode on this channel which is all about the most common grad school interview questions. I'll make sure to insert a card for that either up here or at the end of this video, as well as a link down below in the description. And we also have a video where you can literally practice answering those questions using this kind of very brief format, and so that you can avoid giving long answers. The problem is that you have to keep in mind that on average people who are giving these interviews are giving a lot of interviews. And who knows, you could be their first of the day, so they're ready and raring to go. You could be the last one of the year, of the season, in which case people are so incredibly exhausted that the last thing that they want to do is listen to anyone. It's nothing personal, but to anyone drone on and on and on. They're not interested in that, right? So that's mistake number 1. Try to avoid long answers. 3 sentences, 45 seconds. Give them the opportunity to ask you follow-up questions. Mistake number 2 is using poor body language. Now, this can go in multiple different directions, right? But usually it ends up being that the person being interviewed either comes across as literally too relaxed and too confident, or really overly anxious and nervous, right? Either of those 2 extremes is bad. I have seen it multiple times in both different directions, right? What you want to do is try to have kind of a standard, respectful body language, right? So for example, what I try to do is that, so if this is the chair, this is the back of the chair, and this is kind of the seat portion, right? What I'll do is, instead of leaning all the way back or all the way forward, I will literally push myself to the back and then insert myself maybe 2 inches, a few inches further. That keeps me from kind of leaning back into the chair, and at the same time it keeps me from kind of hunching forward, and it keeps it comfortable for me to kind of keep a nice kind of erect spine, right, when I'm kind of standing there. Right, in terms of my hands, I usually, like put them in my lap, right, and if I do gesticulate, I try to gesticulate with kind of only a single hand, right. This is something where too much gesticulation can kind of throw people off, and if you're like me and I talk with my hands, right, then it's something where that can be a real challenge. But to the extent possible, trying to gesticulate with one hand is really going to help you out quite a bit. And remember, in terms of the nonverbal language literature, right, you want to avoid the point. No point. So if you point, try to do either the clasp like this. So like that's what I think like this, or like the grip, or you're kind of speaking more like this. That's going to keep you from doing kind of the point, which is perceived very negatively in a lot of cultures. Okay. So at the end of the day, you may not actually be sitting in front of the interviewers. It could be a phone interview. Those are becoming exceptionally common these days. Even if you're on the phone, I want you to have the right nonverbals, okay? It's hard to kind of describe why, but something like you can tell if the person on the other end, let's say the phone, is not smiling or is not in a good mood, especially all the paralanguage component of nonverbal communication. You can tell. So just anything you would do, right, sitting directly across from someone, try to do it when you're on the phone as well. Okay, whatever kind of makes you comfortable, etc. But always keep in mind the goodness of fit between the energy levels and the personalities of the individuals who are interviewing you and your own demeanor. Okay, like this is something that's incredibly important. Is if they're very outgoing and they're loud and bombastic and they're energetic, you want to be equally energetic, or if nothing else, not energetic. You know what I mean. You don't want to kind of be talking like this, and the other person is just like, tell me a little bit about your career, I'm so excited. That's not going to go over well for you, right? And this is closely related to mistake number 3. Let's jump into that. So mistake number 3 is not getting to know your potential interviewers beforehand. What you need to do is, if you can figure out either who your interviewers are definitely going to be, or try to get a sense of who they're most likely to be, then what you can do is go back through, take a look at their personal websites in the department, take a look at their CVs, take a look at their publication record for the last 3 years, figure out the topics that they're really passionate about, meaning that usually they're either the first author or the senior author, which could be the final author in most areas of science, on a paper. That means that those papers are kind of their babies. They're really invested in them. Those are the topics they're very passionate about. These are things that are part of their current research line, okay? So once you actually have all of that information, you can also do other things, such as searching for the person on YouTube, or going to a conference to see the person speak. However, you can get a sense of their personality, right? Their nonverbals, etc. And just like I mentioned, mistake 2, this is going to allow you to calibrate yourself and your own demeanor during the actual interview process. Now, this can be really rough if you have a situation where, let's say, you're being interviewed by a panel instead of just one individual at a time. And let's say the panel has 2 people on it or 3 people on it, and they all have different personalities. In that case, that's really, really challenging. If somebody in there that was most likely to be your supervisor, then that's the person that you want to match. Because in grad school, unlike undergrad, it works differently, right? Oftentimes, especially if it's like a research doctorate, then what happens is that you're going to spend the preponderance of your time with the supervisor. So you want to make sure that you're showing you have a goodness of fit with them so that they can say, you know what, this person I could get along with. And they're probably, the supervisor's probably thinking, these guys are so energetic, I'm more low energy. I like this person who I'm interviewing right now because they're a little bit more chilled out like I am instead of more bombastic like these other 2 are, right? So this is just something that's important to take into consideration. Also, if there's any jargon from their literature that you can take into account and kind of utilize, like that's a great thing. So for example, my old field was forensic psychology, specifically violence risk assessment, which is a field where we try to predict the likelihood of future violence. And so because of that, I can use terms like structured professional judgment or area under the receiver operating characteristic curve and calibration and discrimination. And if I use those kinds of terms, somebody else who's in my specific subfield will be like, oh my gosh, this person, they know me, they get it, right? They are deep enough in the field, they know my language. I don't have to teach them a million new things, right, to be able to give them that foundation. So if you can figure out what that jargon is and then use it appropriately, that's gonna make you look real good. Mistake number 4 is something that I call overfamiliarity. And the idea behind overfamiliarity is essentially acting as if, again, it kind of has to do with that hubris, that overconfidence, as if you do not respect the process of going through the interview and you do not respect that there is a dominance hierarchy in academia. Now, the more old school your university is, so for example, one of my doctorates is from Oxford, this is like, they take this unbelievably seriously. Over there, like the structure is, you've got a professor at the top, then a reader, and then a fellow, and then a lecturer, right? And like that's the level, okay? And then you've got postdocs, graduate students, undergrads. So that's kind of the structure. And like, if you just go up or whatever to somebody, if you're like a grad student, you go to somebody who's a professor who's at the tippity top, right? And you say something like, hi, John, how are you? Da, 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 da. Oh my God, you're gonna get like, your supervisor's going to, pull you aside and say, hey, you can't do that. You're being overly familiar, right? These people should not be perceived as your friends. And if you're doing a graduate school interview, some people seem to have this idea that all of a sudden your supervisor is your colleague. They're going to become your colleague once you get the doctorate, but right now you are their supervisee. Okay, you are not on the same level as these people who are interviewing you, unless they're another grad student. Even then, they're probably a more advanced graduate student than you are, and they're already enrolled in the program. It can come across so poorly if you sit down in the graduate school interview and you come across as a know-it-all, right? It's not a good thing. You come across arrogantly, etc. So if you have a personality where sometimes that happens, even inadvertently, you really need to check yourself and keep that really dialed down and under control. And that's a good thing to understand in life in general, is, really trying to avoid overfamiliarity with individuals until not only are you actually at that same level, but it's kind of recognized that you're at that same level. So that's mistake number 4. And finally, mistake number 5 is thinking that your proposed doctoral project, if you've got a really clear idea of the project that you want to do, let's say that you want to use emotion recognition technology to be able to look at callous unemotionality in juvenile offenders. Now that's very specific to my last field, so don't worry, I'm sure that you're in something totally different than that, right? But that's the specific methodology, this is the specific population, and this is the outcome that I'm interested in looking into, okay? So that's where I know the doctoral project is. But then if I take a look at my target supervisor's CV, I look at their resume, and I see that they've just gotten, $1 million in funding to be able to look at something totally different. It is a big mistake to think that just because, the likelihood is that you're going to be paying to do the doctorate. A small amount, a large amount, whatever it is. But a lot of people, I don't know why it is, but they think that because either they're paying to go to graduate school or because, the supervisor is serving that supervisory function, that it is their job to basically serve you in some way, right? That is totally inaccurate, right? So it's a mistake to think that your proposed doctoral project should take precedence over your target supervisor's research agenda. You're gonna fit into your supervisor's research line, research agenda, the papers they're working on. If something that you're really passionate about, you can use the same data set, or maybe they're developing a study protocol, you can add in a few additional things that have to do with what you're passionate about. Absolutely, rock on, that's totally reasonable, right? What's not reasonable is to say, I wanna start a front-to-end project on something that's totally different than what you're doing right now, and that's something that you're also not passionate about, and that, especially if there's grant funding involved, that has nothing to do with the grant. That's just not really a thing, especially if you're at like an R1 university, a Research 1 university. These are kind of the big name schools where it's all soft money. Soft money means that the professors are usually getting paid, or the preponderance of their pay is coming from grant funding as opposed to student tuition money, okay? So in any case, those are the 5 big mistakes when it comes to actually doing a graduate school interview. All right, everybody, thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate your time as always. It really helps us out as a channel if you do like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you want to place a comment below, especially if you liked the video, please do let us know. Not only is it very encouraging for us, but it really does assist the YouTube algorithm in promoting the channel to other people. And of course, we're a young channel, just about a year old at the time that this video is getting made. We do need the help with the growth, so we would really appreciate your help, especially if you can share the link on social media to this video or to other videos that you've enjoyed, and also with your friends, colleagues, and students. If you're interested in one-on-one career mentoring with me, then I warmly welcome you to set up a one-on-one consultation call with me below, and we can set up a plan such that we can work together to be able to help you get into different programs that you're passionate about. If you're already a doctor, to be able to scale your career in academia. I've helped dozens of individuals with this from the channel over the past year with phenomenal outcomes. We also run an annual publishing mastermind where I teach you exactly how to publish in leading peer-reviewed journals. This past year's program has been phenomenal. So over 75% of individuals have successfully published thanks to the mastermind. It's been incredible. So if you're interested in that, also shoot me an email. My details can be found again at that website below. All right, signing off, everybody. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed this video. And don't forget to get out there, take chances, and be your best self. Thank you so much for stopping by, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here as always. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more in this series on navigating academia, please click on one of these links over here to be able to view more original content. I hope to see you there.